Hi, Hearties. Welcome to Heart, our chat with our cast and crew for When Calls the Heart. I'm Dawn Bateman from Texas, and I'm joined with some other admins with the Facebook group.
I'm Kim from Ontario, Canada.
And I'm Marg from California.
And John Tinker, our showrunner, is joining us today. And so where are you now?
Well, I was, and over my shoulder is Union Station in Nashville, Tennessee. I was there this weekend with my wife. We had a great time and celebrated Easter there as well. So,
oh, that's great.
It's very beautiful.
Well,
my goodness.
boy,
absolutely.
Station.
It's like a church steeple on your Union Station.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
So it was nice to close our Easter weekend with a new episode of When Calls the Heart. So can you tell us what moment that you really enjoyed, or what your thought process was?
I can tell you the moment I enjoyed the most is when Lucas and Nathan are sitting in the car, and it's not at all about a driving lesson.
Yep.
and Nathan starts to open up to Lucas, and it's very deliberate. If you see there, not only shot deliberately and well by Peter DeLuise, but acted and edited and written in such a way that these two guys, it's, for me, it's the start of a turn where they might become friends now. And they get in the car and they really don't make eye contact. They're shoulder to shoulder. Men sort of like, in my opinion, to be shoulder to shoulder. Lots of times they work side by side like that, and sometimes they talk like that. In any event, it's without being intimate in some way, making eye contact. They just sort of have a very brief conversation where the door is open to what I believe hopefully will become a friendship between these two, because it could have turned out a very different way.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite moment.
Yeah. No, I love that. I loved Lucas' suit as well for that scene.
I noticed that too. I thought,
yeah, it was.
Why didn't I notice that earlier when we shot? It was beautiful suit.
Well, it's light. Usually he has darker suits, but that was
Exactly.
good. So we have some questions. Well, this one is almost like a comment, but Caroline Richardson of South Carolina loves seeing the town celebration. Me too. I want to be invited. Hope holidays. I'm there. But how did you decide about that kind of pursue that storyline, and and about those 4 to 5 holidays? How did you kind of what's the why of those holidays?
The why for us in the writers' room was, knowing the fans have missed a Christmas movie, and believing we can't do one, so could we in some way make it up? And in addition, rather than just an arbitrary, well, let's just throw them a holiday, we look to think about Hickam and where is Hickam in his arc? What makes Hickam a particularly good mayor at this time? And he's a sensitive person, and with all the chaos and confusion and kerfluffle, he looked around himself, he looked around at the town and thought, what makes this place special? And forgive me, it'll take me closing my eyes and trying to recall. So when he thinks about the town, he thinks about the Thanksgiving that goes on, the love that goes on, the hope that goes on, and also the fun that goes on. It was the sort of those 4 elements that make up Hope Valley for him, as represented by Hanukkah, Valentine's Day, Halloween, and Thanksgiving. And in addition, the April Fools is something that will pay off next week. But that's how we decided and thought we could do sort of a 2-episode arc, hopefully just do some little celebrations. We know we can't give you Christmas, but again, how do you celebrate, and why do you celebrate, and what do you celebrate? And again, Hickam thought those 4 holidays best exemplified the heart of Hope Valley.
And that makes sense now that now that light of him.
And you know what? We edited out something we edited out where he explained that, and maybe we
Mm.
shouldn't have, but he said he indicated the love and the this and the that on the four corners. And again, we did it deliberately
Oh,
that here
I
at the
love
crossroads at the
that.
four corners. So that goes toward, you gotta pay attention, Hearties.
Mm.
Don't
Yeah.
turn
that
away.
is so much better
Wow.
than what I was explaining or trying to comment on in the Facebook group, because I was a little cynical, like, Bill, in his mentoring him last week was the importance of visuals. So I was like, well, we're creating some more visuals,
Well, you know
That's
what,
really
Maud, though,
beautiful.
that's not, there's a collective consciousness that goes into that for Hickam. And again,
Yeah.
we didn't just want to do a holiday celebration show. We really, there's a reason in the Hickam story that Hickam chose those holidays, that he chose to do them right now. And there are other reasons that we chose to do them right now. We felt there was a lot going on in the season, and this sort of maybe provided a time to take a breath, because next week a few of those stories are going to wrap up, and then we're going to head for the clubhouse turn, and things are really going to escalate.
So excited.
Okay. No, I mean, that makes total sense. And of course, the holidays, on a holiday, it kind of, it was interesting to bring the community together, and
Yeah.
really cool.
So again, we don't always, there are always reasons behind what we do. We don't always execute necessarily well, but there are the reasons there. So hopefully they'll hold up.
We did take a collective breath, I think, yesterday in the episode. It was
Yes.
quite nice.
Well,
Can
there's
you
there's one more episode with Hope Valley Days where we wrap it up.
Nice. Could you clear up for us the time of year we're in? Because a couple of
No,
parties
Kim, I
were asking
can't.
about this. No.
No, I can't. It's both a blessing and a frustration for us in the writers' room. We get a late start. Maybe it's not a late seasonally for Vancouver, but we get a late start up there, and we have a very beautiful spring and summer, but they seem to go by so quickly. And by the time we're hitting these back end episodes, it's getting chilly and cold. And so that's the practical aspect of what we shoot. The creative aspect, it seems as though we always begin the season more or less just after Christmas in February, March, and then end up somewhere later on. But I think I've said it before, and it's by way of excuse and not a very good reason, but time is in such a state of flux in Hope Valley that we don't really know when it is. So that's a good question, and I'm giving you a bad answer, but I can't do any better.
Well, the only thing that we heard is Elizabeth saying that it's, almost the fall. So that's the only thing that we kind of.
Right. And Hallmark will frequently rightfully caution us about indicating seasons and times of year. But in storytelling, there's now and again when we have to do it. And you're right. We did tickle the possibility of a fall wedding or a spring wedding, or who knows. And by the way, while I'm talking about it, sweet Highland, did you notice as he sat on Lucas's lap? It was just about at the bewitching hour for him. He was
so cute.
Tired. Adorable.
So cute.
Adorable.
So sweet.
Every time he's on camera, I mean, I melt. He's so great.
Adorable. But I did think he looked a little stunned, like when they were talking about the wedding. It was like there was a little bit. Then right back into the looking at the fire, but there was a little wow.
I tell you, there is a moment coming late in the season where you'll just flip about his reaction. So stay tuned.
Oh my
gosh.
I need to binge it right now.
So Elizabeth was out about town collecting books and biscuits for little Jack.
Yes.
And then she goes to the library and she sees the sign that Nathan made for her, and it causes her to pause and to think about things she once feared and she's now overcome. Tell us about that, what that was all about.
Well, again, since this, we're all family, I try and be as honest as I can here. I'm never dishonest, but I may leave out some of the details. But in all honesty, there was a question last week about, will we see the book wagon? and Elizabeth, there was a little hiccup we hit, a little bump in the road with the book wagon, and what you're seeing there is some tears in the fabric, and we tried to patch it. Although we felt it's an important time, and I also kind of liked the scene. It played better for me than at least for me than I thought it would, where it's just a scene where she talks about, with all that's going on with oh gosh, forgive me, the young lady who's working in the at Abigail's now.
Anna.
Yeah. And where she is and where everyone is and where Elizabeth is talking about, why do we do things and how do we move forward? Is it just out of fear that we do things? And she just wants to thank Lucas and acknowledge how much he means to her, because I believe it was last week he said, I can't tell you how much it means to me just to have you by my side sitting here. And so it was just, again, a moment to it was not necessarily a moment that drives story forward, yet it did have some reason for it to be there. But because we decided to pull back on the book wagon story, we thought, what's another angle and how does this make sense in the narrative? And so she's just thanking him. And then we kind of put a button on it with a romantic accordion.
I loved that accordion with Gustav playing the accordion.
Talking about Gustav when they were talking on the saloon, that was, every time I see it, I bust. I mean, it's so funny. I love Gustav.
He's a great character. He's a great character. And Elizabeth Stewart, I believe, came up with that character, and she just, you want to run with it. Actually, one of the best lines for me all year was Elizabeth Stewart wrote the line when Lucas was doing something badly, and Gustav said, well, when a man wears two hats, one of them is bound to fall off. I thought that was a great line.
Unless it's glued on, and then another issue. Yes. So there were a couple moments that I know the admins had a little gasp over last night, because we expected that it would elicit a pretty strong reaction from the Hearties. As much as we love the Canfields and we want them to get that loan and everything to be fine, we also feel loyal and attached to Abigail's Cafe and don't want to see those shares. It sort of brings to mind, will we not see Lori return to that role? And so I think we're just feeling a little sad about that transition.
Well, I can tell you that none of us in the writer's room, and many, I won't speak for others, but all of us in the writer's room would love to see Lori back on the show. I don't know, again, creatively and practically, whether those two things will sync, but if in fact she sells the shares of the cafe and everything, it's not us closing the door. That door always remains open. In fact, that started out in part, we thought we were going to have her back. She was going to come in and sign them over. She's so far away from it, in our minds. She talks to Elizabeth about the Canfields, and she thinks maybe this isn't fair, that it's just sort of a money-making thing for me. I'm not there. She's beloved by all of us there, the character and Lori. So we have not and won't shut the door. In fact, again, in all honesty, there was at one point where we naughtily thought we would repaint the sign and put a thing over it, and everyone would be up in arms, and then we would take the thing down and reveal it says Abigail's. It's just been repainted and freshened up. But we thought that's not even nice to do, and so we didn't want to cause any short-term or long-term problems. But that cafe, the heart and soul of it is always going to be Abigail, and that's something we will retain and will remain with the Canfields and Bill Avery. We won't change the name of it, and would love to see her back.
I love that. And our conversation with Allie Devereaux last week, who's wrote an episode that's coming up, and a writer's assistant. I mean, we were frankly just completely blown away by how much depth goes into this. And it doesn't surprise us, of course, that you have a whole story kind of in your minds written about Abigail's absence, and that in your mind you have the things that she's been doing and the conversations that she's been having, even if we haven't seen them on camera. It's so interesting.
Right. And so the history of the show is something we never want to violate. And we always want to be mindful where we're going with the show. And taking into account all of the fans. We love this show. When we're writing this show, as I said, it was only a brief naughty thought that we would think we're changing the name of the cafe. That's not nice. So we're not going to do that. And by the way, since you mentioned Allie, whom we all love and is the repository, not only the repository of all things Wen calls the heart, but a really good writer. I let her know about bathroom, and she said that term. Did she talk about the term?
She did, but you need to do
Allie
the
to my
full
rescue,
moment.
our rescue.
Yeah, she basically said that bathroom actually was in the vernacular, and so you're all good.
I thought we checked it out between Allie and Derek and Elizabeth and Peter or whoever else, set deck or other people. We try and remain honest to the time period.
No, you guys are on it. We know that you're on it. So we just don't always know all the research that goes into it. So it's so fun to hear it.
Right.
So
Allie is a dog with a bone.
clearly, we can't wait for the Hearties to see the chat with her, because it was another mind blower. It really was, on the artistry that goes into this. It's incredible. So no, it really is. Speaking of artistry, I mean, it was just Kevin's face in the driving scene, that tension between the two of them with, her straight lace detail, like
Elizabeth,
draining all the fun out of any driving lesson whatsoever. And he just wanted to push all the buttons, and it was great. It was so funny. Tell us though, he gets out of the car and he's like, I'm not sure that the two of us were meant to be. Tell us why you poked fun with that.
Well, there are a couple of things about that scene. We had written a very different driving scene, and then in part, practically, it wasn't going to be, we weren't going to be able to shoot it. I think it was in Clement. And then Erin Krako had a great idea. It was actually Erin's idea. And she was totally right. Again, it fits the character. That's how she learned to drive. That's how she would teach someone how to drive. And so it really was Erin's, Erin gets the credit there. And then we just rolled it out. As far as why Nathan zetzes her at the end, that maybe we, again, for me and the other writers, it felt like that car was sort of a time machine that both Elizabeth and Nathan, when they sit in there, or Lucas, excuse me, sit in there with Nathan, it marks sort of the turning point in their relationship. So from there,
interesting.
We sort of now think of the relationship between Elizabeth and Nathan as a sort of brotherly, sisterly relationship, and the relationship with Lucas and Nathan is sort of a brother. But again, we felt most important that they all get along and have, and that the experience of that, dare I say, triangle, they came out better for it, and that they do still love each other and care for each other in new and different ways. And that will all roll out. That will continue to roll out over the season with both Elizabeth and Lucas when it comes to Nathan.
So yeah, it's clear that they're getting increasing comfort with each other and with the underlying tension. It's the underlying tension. So it wasn't like a sour grapes moment. It was
not at all.
It's like you're being teachery, and I'm not sure I enjoy that aspect of you. Kind of,
That's right.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. So the other storyline, we talked about the town council, and there was a lot of comments about that. It's not really a question, but Ashley Marie from Berkeley, Massachusetts, and other Hearties want to understand why May Sue was picked to fill the vacancy on the town council, with others that have been in Hope Valley for a long time. And so can you help us with that?
Our reasoning was that, both practical and creative. On the practical side, if we're going to represent Hope Valley and the characteristics that best exemplify what it means to be to live in Hope Valley. Love is one of the most, and her that story, that characteristic, and her story is about love and unrequited love, and when it comes to Jeffrey, and possible love when it comes to Nathan. And so, there was a practical aspect to it as well. And then we also thought that, the town council, that again, off camera in our minds, May went to them and said, listen, I'm new here, but what a blessing to be here. And she's very enthusiastic and wanting to be involved, and knowing she's gotten off on the wrong foot in this town. So those were some of our reasons. There are other folks who could have done it, but we just felt narratively that fit the best.
Yeah, that's where I landed. I was like, I don't know about your town, but in our town, it's very hard to get people to volunteer for
Well,
these
that's the other thing. That is the other thing.
Yeah.
So perhaps Ned recommended her, or perhaps she volunteered.
Right. And again, Ned and Florence went over the other and said, listen, we've been remiss and we want you to please be here. So all of that came to a head.
It's so interesting because, you talk about when they talked about Carson, and
Yes.
I'm like, so to me it was just, it'll be Faith, Dr. Carter, right? So yeah.
Yes.
So I'm like, what was the kind of the decision making? But anyway, but Faith has been dealing with a lot of stuff in
Right.
this
And
episode
was
as well.
obviously last night, whether this was in fact as specified, an infirmary. Is it she had a foot in each camp, and so what was she going to do? So she was kind of busy, and as Marcia said, tough to get people to step up.
Right. Well, that whole thing about the infirmary and getting the sign on the bonfire, things like that, she is, transitioning from,
Yes.
something that was funded with the coal mine, now going to private practice. So, and the conversation about the X-ray machine was really interesting. But she's like, I have to be on my feet for my practice. And then we see Bill going to Dr. Carter and saying, well, I have a headache, but now, I'm having issues. And I'm like, we're like escalation from headache to pneumonia is really kind of like
Possible pneumonia.
I know that
possible.
Well, where are we going with that one?
Right. Well, you'll have to stand by. Just know that we're not killing people.
But it'd be a great idea if we had an X-ray machine.
It would be a great idea. And we need an X-ray machine, don't we, Molly?
Yeah. Pinball machine is nice. Yeah, I mean, the pinball machine is nice, but the X-ray machine may come out a little bit.
Hey, I didn't think of that. Good idea. Let's get a pinball machine. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I there's the season's way too short for us as writers. There's so much we want to tell, and there are scenes that sometimes we feel we have to not do because of time, and I know that I'm prescient. I know someone's going to ask a question about what lands on the editing floor. Last year, more film than we would really have liked wound up on the floor, and scenes that we would like to have seen. This year, there isn't much. There are a couple episodes where we ran over, but it was more just it caught us by surprise. Usually we can time that out pretty well and know where we are. And so we trimmed it back, but still the show does run at a good clip. So if you turn away and look back, something may have changed. So this is not why we do it, but I'll be honest. It bothers me less if someone misses something the first time and it causes them to go back and rewatch the show and catch things. And I'm not saying we try and do that. We don't, but we feel it's almost as enjoyable or more to watch it another time because there will be things you'll pick
No
up.
question.
Absolutely.
No question.
We never want to short shrift the audience when it comes to what the narration is and what the story is. There are times where we've tripped up and we've left out some important information, but hopefully either upon a second viewing, it makes sense, or just know that we have something in our mind and we don't always express it as well as we could. But there are so many characters. There are 20 plus characters in the show, and we love to let them all shine because they do. They're terrific actors and characters who've become beloved over 9 seasons.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because I hear a lot of people say about Hallmark in general that they just leave it on all the time. And it's what, they kind of go in and out as they're cooking or cleaning or whatever. And, it clearly in our society today, people don't necessarily just sit down and watch. They're on their phones, they're doing other things. Obviously, we're tweeting while we're watching.
And thank you for that. At the same time, I watch.
Yeah, it's a very rich palette, and with that many characters, I think you're right. To really grasp it, I think rewatching is a great way. Obviously,
don't stop tweeting.
No, we will never stop
especially
tweeting.
At this time of year.
We will never stop tweeting. But
well,
but
the numbers today. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please.
I was going to say, Hallmark said that we were trending at 5.
Wow.
Again last night?
See that, and I'm like,
wow, that's awesome.
15. There was someone else that had 8, but Hallmark mentioned that it was trending.
That's amazing.
5,
oh my gosh, on Easter night.
Yeah.
Crazy. Wow.
Yeah, great.
Well, it was a great night to be evangelizing, like sharing the show with your family that was over to visit.
That's a great idea. Yes, totally. Yeah, I just think, sometimes confusion does crop up. In particular, a lot of people are asking about Wyman Walden and the oil company. And so do you want to say a word about that? Again,
we may not always be as clear as we think we are being, because we have a lot of balls and we're juggling them up, and there are 4 and 5 writers and scripts going back and forth. That's one reason Allie is so not only beloved but integral to the situation, because she's the master of being able to direct traffic. Just know that we are always going to wrap up stuff. It may not be the way you wanted it to, but the Wyman Walden stuff will wrap up, and I would say somewhat with some alacrity too. That's one of those stories that we felt, again, in all honesty, that we need to wrap this one up because we want to spend some more time with our folks over there. So that will wrap up in due time, but quickly. And hopefully you won't be confused. And we do realize the importance of being with our own characters and not necessarily bringing in outside characters. So
but honestly, your own characters get other gigs and go, there's sometimes spans of time where they're not available to do the story in a continuous way.
I said to Rhonda last night, I think it was at the bar when Gowan and Lucas are talking about Fiona being gone, and I said, on another show.
Yeah, exactly.
She's gone for 2 episodes. So
right.
And that's the reality of having actors who are in demand. And we always try and accommodate those folks, and fulfilled and happy actors are good actors usually.
Yeah.
So
yes.
We miss them, but we try and get them back from San Francisco as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And speaking of time, by the way, not only in Hope Valley, time is rather elastic when it comes to traveling. People seem to get to Chicago and San Francisco and no time flat.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A blink of an eye, the stagecoach must have gone very fast, very, very fast. You referenced this a little bit, but we do have Hearties that are always watching to say, were there deleted scenes? Were there deleted parts of scenes? We got people who want to see more of that pillow fight. Tell us, it seems like it's a very tight, as you've described, a very tight editing process and a very tight, with that many characters to get in. Talk to us about, was there a lot left on the cutting room floor this year?
overall, this season, no, there wasn't. There were as I said, there were a couple of episodes that ran long. We have two really fantastic editors who happen to be husband and wife,
Aw.
but
Oh,
equally good.
Congratulations.
I didn't know
Equally
that. That's
good.
cool.
Party.
Yeah, you should if you can talk to them, maybe together. They're really, really good, and both he and she have their own styles, and yet it's a style that works well with this show, with When Calls the Heart. And to be able to go into the editing room with a first cut that's maybe 5 to 7 minutes long, that sounds like a lot, but then you free them up to do their magic, and they can whittle it down without cutting into story and get us to time. Again, doesn't it seem like there are a lot of commercials, and I'm not blaming Hallmark or the advertisers, because without them we wouldn't be watching any minutes of Hallmark, but the minutes seem to, for me anyway, go by quickly of the show, and
Yes.
I wish we had more minutes.
Yeah.
Well, one of the admins has tracked it, and there are the same number of minutes this season of commercials as has always been the case.
That's
So
right. There
it's
are.
not more, but it
Right,
often feels like
no
more.
less, there's no less viewing time for the show.
Yes.
I just enjoy watching our folks do what they do so well.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, we can't wait for the show to come back from commercial break. So of course, we don't want it to go on commercial break.
Right.
It's showing that it's such a good show, right?
Oh, good. Well, thanks to you.
Well, and
guys.
somebody mentioned this week that she feels like it just kind of interrupts the flow. Do you feel that way, that it interrupts the flow?
It does. It can, and you try and write around those things by giving scenes buttons and strong outs. And there was some this episode last night it didn't have particularly strong act outs, though we try. I've never written I've written mostly network and cable shows. I've never written a cable show that has no commercials, so I'm just used to writing that way. But I would like to, and hopefully will, write a show that is uninterrupted, but it can disturb the flow, as she said.
Well, those are terms we haven't talked about, buttons and act outs. So it's cool to get that terminology. I love it.
If you want to get our editors on, that'd be great.
Yeah, we would love that.
Okay.
We've been learning so much, and everyone loves it.
I learned so much. We all learn from each other's disciplines, whether it's the art department or music, as I mentioned before, and I think John Serrata and I will be on here together at some point, but I've learned a lot from John Serrata about storytelling, and it's just fabulous. That can only mean they're doing their jobs really well, and you need to pay attention and keep up.
Yeah, well, I love the Rosemary and Lee with for the music when they're in their costumes.
Isn't it fun?
There's something.
Oh, that little Shazam zingy thing when she was
perfect.
That was so cute.
And again, a lot like watching the show. If you're not listening to the show, you can miss some of those things. And I've caught one or two of them on the second viewing.
Yeah. So those are cute.
That was darling. It really was.
And as you know, the same goes for set deck and costumes and things like that. So.
No question. No question.
Great.
Yeah.
So we have so many storylines and threads still to resolve, and only 5 episodes left this season. So Brian Bird said in a podcast that episode 8 is particularly important, and it's coming up. We see that Mei Su gets taken into custody in the preview, and Lee and Rosemary are chastened that maybe they've gone a bit too far with those editorials. Can you tease us any idea of which of the storylines might come to a head next week? Yeah,
the Lee and Rosemary story does come to a head next week. Though that their story as a couple, their story as editors in the paper. Someone wrote, "I don't like this storyline," and I was going to write, "I do." But it continues. Sorry,
but the pen is mightier than the sword. So.
but Lee's going to learn some lessons here along the way that he couldn't have otherwise learned, wouldn't have otherwise learned, and that helps in his growth as a character, as a person. And Rosemary is integral to helping him learn. There will be some resolution in the Canfield story. There was another one that's coming up too. Oh, of course, the May storyline. You will get gobs of information next week.
Oh,
And
Mm.
that whole relationship with that mysterious man who's followed her and burst into Bill Avery's office will be resolved, and that will inform if there is any relationship between May and Nathan. There's lots to happen, and you'll even see an April Fool's joke, which is less a
wow.
joke and more a nod and a thank you to the fans.
Oh,
Oh, that's cute.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm only going to say this: the weather was very uncooperative.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
oh
but stay
gosh.
tuned. But it's great, and you know what? The crew, I've never heard a complaint from the crew or the actors when they're standing out in a downpour. They're really terrific. So but it is the April Fool's joke. I can tell you, I can spoil it for you by saying it really is a thank you to all of you, and a heartfelt tip of our hat.
Aw.
Of it. Ben Rosenbaum shared some behind the scenes footage last night
He's
of
funny.
Javen pulling down the tarp from the Hope
Right.
Valley Days sign, and it was a downpour. I mean, that looks like some rough.
It was it was a really rough fall up there. Really,
Wow.
really rained a lot.
Right. Got it. Well, we just love Monday morning quarterbacking with you, John. It's so much fun.
I do too. It's another way for me to think about the show. I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, I love this show. I hope I'll speak for the other writers who would say the same thing. I hope we're all doing a good job. I hope you're loving the show, but we sure do love trying to care for it and to grow and nurture it. So thank you for watching. It means the world to us, and the numbers unfortunately are a reality, and those mean the world to Hallmark, in addition to your fandom. So that means a lot to them too.
Yeah. Well, I think this season has been, well, when we talked with Ben about the character arc with Hickam, and even with Lee and the whole mayor race, things like that, I think we need, and we really are seeing more human of, fallacies or kind of things that you need to kind of resolve. And I was talking about the mayor's race, and Lee has always been positive, always been, like a good sport, and I was comparing it with the when you interview with a job and you don't get it, and the reality is you're like, I should have had it, I'm the one that's really the most qualified. And I see those behaviors between Bill and Lee, and I love that we see that kind of, not the weakness, but the humanity.
So
Well,
working through it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I mean, we thought it was interesting. Lee means well. Lee is meaning well in so much he's doing here, and yet it doesn't always come out the way you intended to. And as Rosemary said, the truth can hurt, but said in love, maybe that's something else altogether different. So, those are fun stories to write, the ones that aren't so straight ahead and they boomerang. And so
Yeah, and again, as we talked about last week, that Rosemary several times has been the voice of reason, which we don't necessarily expect from her.
That's new.
Yeah, it's new. And her cautioning last night, you need to talk to Joseph first about this loan situation before you just move ahead. and we know that's gonna come back. You know, we know that's
right.
coming. Yeah.
I Rosemary, what I love is Rosemary's really good at what she does. She's really smart and just as a fabulous editor. And at the same time, she comes over to take their photos and starts to sing. And are we ready? And she's a lot of fun, and she still has that dramatic flair.
And talk about rewatching. It was the Hearties this morning who pointed out it's just funny how Bill kind of behind, I don't know who was standing in the middle, but Bill's like, Lee,
Stop your wife.
Can you handle that? Can you get your wife to stop singing?
Exactly. No, it
yeah,
really is. It's fun to watch the episodes and pick up those things. I have to be honest. I don't think I caught that until a couple of times viewing it.
Really?
Right.
The actors do that a lot, and it's fun, and the writers will do it, and it's a fun show. There's joy in making the show and joy in the kinds of stories we're trying to tell, and I think that only fosters and encourages an environment and playfulness. That life can be pretty darn swell when you come together and hold one another up. And so again, I love doing the show. I know Derek and Elizabeth and Allie and Peter and we all do. So thank you.
Well, again, it was a beautiful holiday celebration to close out our holiday celebration, and we're just enjoying, gathering so much information about the artistry that goes into it. So we love it, and we love learning more. So it's all good. It's all fun.
Sure.
We also love featuring your questions, Hearties. So please make sure to submit them each week on our solicitation posts for Heart to Heart. And we'll be watching with you Sunday night, 8:00 on the Hallmark channel, and tweeting always with the hashtag Hearties. We will be tweeting, no doubt about it. This has been Heart to Heart. We'll see you next week.